So let's go ahead and finish off with talking about this horror show of whatever Rings of Power is. We got episode 3 this week. Woo!
Might have been episode 300. That's what it felt like. We're gonna get 50 hours of this, but it's gonna feel like the longest running TV series of all time.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Because there's lots of like drone footage of landscapes and stuff that goes on for way too long, but it's all over the place.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
New Zealand's beautiful, isn't it? It's like, yes, we know New Zealand's beautiful. Can we get on some of the plot, please?
And for some reason, they decided to make it even worse with this episode by including just like an exuberant amount of slow-mo in this episode as well.
What the frick was the slow-mo, dude?
I genuinely think they spent so much on the cameras and then found out they could do slow motion with them. They're like, I've got to use that. Like, you know,
they're like, well, yeah, we can't not use it.
£30,000 on a camera and not using all of its features.
Galadriel is still completely just horrendous in this episode as well.
Oh, she's worse.
Even like so
people are nice to her and she's just an asshole back.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Like literally she shows up in Numenor and she's like in the courtroom and she's just acting like she has like this chip on her shoulder the entire scene. Yeah. It's like, why are you
like, give me a boat?
Her allies.
Yeah, they're like, give me a boat, bitch. And they're like, no. And she's like, you don't tell me no. And they're like, we just did.
Yep.
Like,
she literally calls their ships like a few planks of wood and a piece of string or something. And I'm like, wow, so you're insulting them as you're demanding you get one from them. Even though they joined our side against Morgoth, it's like, yeah, so you might want to be grateful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they literally use like some of those planks of wood and string to save your life from the ocean. So like
when she's about to nick a boat and it's like, you won't even get out the harbor. She's like, it was better than a situation I was in. No, because you're still in the ocean about to die with certain death from your own words. Certain death isn't better than certain death. That's not how that works.
Yeah, and immediately as soon as like Hal Brand did his thing where he was like hugging the guy randomly, it's like, okay, he's taking the dagger. There's like, and apparently in a room where there's like, you know, like 50 people, like nobody apparently saw it somehow as well.
It's worse than that. I was like, well, they've just made it magically vanish and then they've magically brought it back in. But you actually see him, he's holding it like behind his hand and up behind his arm. But that only works in a magic trick because the camera's in a fixed perspective. So he's hiding it from the camera, but showing it to the entire room of people behind him.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
So bad.
Dude, the show is so bad.
Look, they actually broke the fourth wall with a dagger.
Yeah.
Her like constant like belittling and berating everyone around her, and everybody's just like, you know what? It's fine. I'm like, why? Like, just kill her. They're like, I'll stab you, and she's like, no, you won't. You don't know who I am. They're like, yeah, I do, and I'll fucking stab you. And she's like, no, you won't.
Yeah.
What is it about you, mortal, that makes you think you can do this to me when you have no idea who I am or something like that? I'm like, wow. Oh, and then there's the bit where she's like, I want the boat. It's like, well, no, we bought it. We paid for this island in blood, essentially, because we died in Fort Morgoth for it. We earned this ourselves. You gave us nothing. And she's just like, if blood is the price, I'll pay it. She essentially said, I will kill all of you to get a boat, despite the fact that this is your island. Yeah, they do the palace scene, then she gets caught trying to nick the boat, and then he speaks Elvish, and she's like, oh, I want to go to where you learned Elvish. Like, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I go on a horse? Yeah, you can go on a horse. Nobody expected us to be that excited to go on a horse, but there you go.
Yeah.
And then that one place happened to have all of the answers that she could possibly have ever needed to just sit in there.
The sea is always right as well. That is something that they really wanted to get across in this episode.
The sea is always right.
The sea is always right.
Yeah.
I mean, Hal Brand, you know, who is definitely not anybody but a regular human being. Guys, he's nobody else. There's nothing special about this guy.
He really likes forging.
Yep.
Really fucking likes forging. I love how these people show up and they're like, what's up, bitch? We don't like you. And he's like, you want a drink? And they're like, sure, why the hell not? Yeah, we're friends now. It's cool. And then immediately they're like, by the way, I noticed you stole my shit. And he's like, hey, you can have it back. Like, you stole from the guy. Why would he be like at this point, they're going to beat you up because you stole from them. And he's like, not if I beat you up first.
They were walking away. Like, they knocked him to the ground and they were about to leave him. They turned to leave and then you just see this go, ah! It's like, whoa! God.
Yeah. No chill at all, dude.
It's like when she does find the whole Mordor thing, they tell you what that sign is 3 times in 3 different ways to make sure that you really understand what this is.
Yep.
The dialogue is probably like one of the worst things about the show. They either are very, very redundant with a lot of the dialogue, or they try to make all these things sound super smart, but really it's just not at all.
To give them the most generous interpretation, I think they are trying to sound like Tolkien when they do that.
Yeah.
They're trying to imitate something greater themselves, which you can't do.
Right.
That's the problem there. But they still tried to do it anyway. And it's like, no, for $1 billion, you could have got someone that could do that.
Yeah.
But you would have needed someone who essentially was a master of language.
Yeah.
And it's like they never even, no, we can do it. Yeah. I've written for Star Trek before. I can do this.
Yeah. At least with Peter Jackson with like Lord of the Rings, there was a lot of like lines and dialogue that were from different characters that they kind of like would shift around and have other characters say them in different scenes, but it was all still for the most part like Tolkien. Like it was all still coming from the book, even if a lot of the dialogue was, you know, cut and copy and pasted to like another character in another scene or whatever else. Like it was still all still from the book. So,
but I even think there's ways you could do it. Like you could just write a normal script, and then you could pay someone that was really into sort of literature and language and that kind of stuff, and they could essentially like almost translate it into something that fits better.
Right.
Yeah.
The same way they write about books. When you first write a book, you've got loads of extraneous language in there, and then through repeated iterations, you get it down to like a far tighter bit of prose. And so they needed to do something like that with this.